Hello everyone, welcome to Unacademy, and we are here back with the daily news analysis session. And for the last few days we have not taken a sessions, because many of the people were actually focusing on the prelims. At the same time, right, we have also got a Sunday in between. So due to certain kind of reasons we were unable to take up the session. But yeah, here we are back once again with the session, the daily news analysis, and we'll be continuing the same, right, going forward. That is something which first I just would like to let you all know. Okay, and before we start the session, right, I would like to just wait for 1 minute and then we'll start the topics. Okay, yes. Right. So let's not delay much and let's start with the discussion now. So coming to right, before we start the session of the day, right, I just would like to let you all know about the toppers who have actually cracked, the UPSC in the year 2020 with the support of Unacademy, and we have got a lot of learners, right? Especially we could say in the top 20, we have got about 7 learners, and yes, we do have a rankers in the top 50 also. So this shows really an amazing thing. And what do you generally require for the UPSC examination? That is provided to you by Unacademy, especially the guidance from the top educators. You can get the test series, that would be both mains test series as well as prelims test series. You will have the high quality learning material that will be directly delivered to your home, right? And they will be having a dedicated doubt sessions and answer writing sessions, and very good coverage of the current affairs, including with that of the magazine of Articulate. This is something which an academy offers you, right? And many batch courses will be held, right, starting from 21st of October. Right, batch courses will be started, be it geography, PSIR, PABAD, sociology, anthro, and mathematics. All of these will be started from 21st of October. And yes, then we also have the batch courses that have been created for the 21, 22 as well as 2023, starting from 18th of this particular month, that is of October. Right, we have bilingual as well as English batch courses. That is something we just would like to mention. And the next important thing, that is on 17th of October you will be having a combat, and that's going to be history and polity special combat, and you can use the code which is highlighted here to join this combat too. Okay, so let's not delay much and start our discussion with respect to the topic number 1. So one of the most important thing that was going on in the news, one is about the quad grouping and the other one was about the AUKUS. We earlier have taken up a very detailed discussion with respect to the AUKUS grouping, which has been formed between Australia, UK and US. The main concept of AUKUS grouping is very simple. They say it's a security grouping directly. And Quad was almost having a similar kind of focus earlier when it was formed, especially during the previous regime of the government of United States of America. But looking at the way it is being taken up right now, right, Quad is not going to be a complete security one alone. In fact, they say it has transformed a lot. And transformation as in, right, the US Deputy Secretary of State says that Quad is a non-defense, non-military agreement. They say very clearly Quad is a non-defense, non-military agreement, and this is something which she has mentioned, right, very specifically during her visit. And she states that both Quad and AUKUS are totally different, because they say Quad is non-military and non-defense. For example, with respect to the vaccines, with respect to infrastructure, with respect to the supply chain, with respect to the technology and climate, all these things are taken up in the Quad. But when it comes to this particular case, right, they very specifically say that, right, Quad is something which is not going to look into the security perspective of this, whereas AUKUS is going to be in that particular region, right, where she mentioned very clearly even to the Pakistani television channel that Quad is a cooperative effort which will work on the aspects like energy, people to people exchange, infrastructure, supply chain resilience, whereas AUKUS is completely different. With the support of UK, they are going to ensure that Australia gets the nuclear powered submarines. This is something which is going to happen in this particular case, and Indian officials says very clearly, maybe COVID-19 pandemic has completely transformed the way that we have looked after. Especially after the COVID-19 pandemic has hit the world, right? Now the Quad has focused on vaccines, technology, supply chain resilience, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. This is something how the Biden administration is looking at when it comes to Quad. And there are some officials who say Quad must be downgraded. There are some who say it may not be downgraded. But one point is they have brought a clear distinction between both of them. So Quad is one certain kind of project that's going to be a game changer when it comes to the that's going to be a game changer with respect to many other areas which are non-security. But according to US now they say it's AUKUS which is going to be the maritime purpose. It's going to be completely different. So this is something which is a interesting thing too. But some people, especially like former Indian ambassador to China, where he says that he's the one who asked this question to clear a distinction between Quad and AUKUS, and she mentions it very very clear. Quad may not be a military alliance, but the point is at any point of time, what they say is right. Quad may not be a military exercise, but it will continue to do the military activities like Malabar exercise. Right, so this is something which they are talking about too. But some people, some experts are this very specifically they say it's going to be a different one compared to that, and maybe Quad must have been downgraded, they say too. But one other point of time, right, it's very clearly that they have been trying to, in one perspective we could say that US is trying to undermine the Quad's role and they are focusing more on AUKUS, but AUKUS alone is not going to be sufficient for this region too. That is something which we could say. Okay, right. Moving on to the next one. The next upcoming, a very 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 important thing is going to happen. It's about the COP26, the Conference of Parties 26 with respect to the climate things. So what is it going to happen right now? The British Prime Minister has called the Prime Minister of India and asked that India has to announce a more ambitious nationally determined contribution. This is something which he has mentioned. He said that India has to go with a most ambitious nationally determined contributions because the United Nations Climate Change Summit is going to be started from 31st of October in UK. So he asked India to do much better changes. And it's not just the only discussion. They did talk on vaccine certifications on Afghanistan, many other things too. But the Prime Minister has conveyed that India is very much committed to the climate action. Right now the president, UK is the president of the upcoming climate change conference. So they are asking almost all the countries to update their nationally determined contributions so that we will reach the climate targets for the next few decades. Because climate change is a very serious problem. It continues to affect all of us. So we need to work on that. And the Prime Minister of UK has talked about how important is this. There's no doubt about it. India is one among those particular nations who have been definitely leading the world in the renewable technology. And what he's expecting from India right now is that India is also one nation which has not announced the net zero emissions deadline also. So what they might be expecting is this. There are 193 member states which are the ones which have listed their NDCs. But of them, only 19 of them have updated them. For example, India first has issued its NDCs in 2016 where we say that very clearly we will reduce the emissions by 33 to 35% of GDP by 2030. This is first NDC. And then we also stated 40% of our energy will come from renewable energy. But now what they are asking is to update it. What is the update? Where they are expecting India to have 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. And the next one that they're expecting is to give a deadline for net zero emissions. But what is this net zero emission? Some people are often in a confusion. That doesn't mean that we are not going to emit any carbon at all. No, it's not that way. Where it's the amount of the carbon that is being released and the amount of carbon that is being absorbed would be nullified. That is something which would be taken up here. Okay, so it is something which is very very important and they are right now focusing on that particular area, we could say, right? This is something which they're expecting. At any point of time, even the Prime Minister of India, has been invited to attend the United Nations Climate Change Conference, which will be held in Glasgow from 31st of October to November 12th. But yeah, the Prime Minister hasn't given any yet confirmation to that too. But he earlier has supposed to go to G7 meet that has been cancelled due to COVID-19 pandemic. The visit of UK Prime Minister to India has been cancelled because of the pandemic. But at any point of time, that would be taken very seriously, and I'm expecting that, according to my personal opinion, that India would definitely announce some great things, at least in this particular summit, to be showing some kind of support to us. And then foreign secretary visits have happened, UK foreign secretary has come to India, where the UK foreign secretary met the Indian Minister of External Affairs also. Right, they have been talking about different kind of things, and we already knew about what has happened with respect to the matter of Covishield wala things, which we stated that UK have waived the the mandatory quarantine of 10 days for the Indians who have been vaccinated with the Covishield. That has already been done too. And with respect to Afghanistan, they talked about how we can develop some common international perspective on concepts of extremism, terrorism, and such kind of things. Okay, that's it. And the next one is about the Prime Minister of India will be attending a virtual meeting of G20 leaders on Afghanistan. At any point of time, India is being very much concerned in the matter of Afghanistan on this matter about how and what we should be doing. And before this meeting, right, the Minister of External Affairs, Mr. Jaishankar, and the Minister of State for the External Affairs also talked to the world and stated how the multilateral platforms have to deal with this Afghan crisis. Because right now, at any point of time, we don't want terror be exported from Afghanistan. India also told it very clear on the position of Afghanistan to to the Kyrgyzstan counterpart, to the Kyrgyzstan foreign minister, to many people, that we are looking at the developments and it is something a concern for us. We all have to ensure that this particular resolution, resolution of UN that is called 2593, this has to be implemented. There are some particular people who are talking about it, but at any point of time, it is the most important thing we need to implement them. And after looking at what is happening, right, it is imperative that the international community has to be guided by the UN resolution of 2593, where Afghanistan territory should not be used to export the terror to any other countries. And Italy, which is the right now the chairperson of G20, has discussed the situation in Kabul and other cities, with the many other countries like Russia and China, where the Prime Minister of Italy has seen about what is happening in Afghanistan and what we should do. And Italy also says that Taliban denying the women's rights, making it very difficult for the world, because no one would recognize when you are not forming an inclusive government here. So that is another important news that we have got over here. Next topic is about Iran makes an announcement that they are ready to do a strategic partnership agreement with Russia. They are ready for a strategic partnership agreement with Russia. Right? So now it is very important to see, right? Iran says that we are ready for a strategic partnership agreement with Russia. So this shows very clearly about they already have this agreement with that of China, and now this is going to be with us. So the most important point is whenever we deal with whenever we deal with this kind of thing, right, generally we want to be in such a kind of situation. We won't be in such a kind of situation about what is happening with respect to the matter of Iran in particular, because we are always concerned about Iran and the way the things are going on too. So they say that we are going on with some kind of strategic partnership agreement, but one thing that it can also be seen as a grouping that is being formed against US. Yeah, we could say it in that way too. Because they say, right, Iran, China, and Russia, with this, the Eastern Axis is emerging. So they say very clearly, Iran hopes that the document will be signed in the upcoming months. So, earlier, they have signed a 25-year strategic partnership agreement with that of China after years of talks. And now this is something which is going to be an important thing. And we have one last but the most important. It's about the Nobel Prize. Nobel Prize for Economy. Right, what exactly is it now about, and what is that these people have worked on? Generally, we often see that about how things work when it comes to the Nobel Prize. Right, last year and before last year, you have seen different kind of people who were given the Nobel, especially in the development economics, in the welfare economics, and this time the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has awarded the Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel 2021 to 3 US-based economists. It has been awarded to 3 US-based economists, where of this one half will be going to, David Card. He is a person who is now teaching exactly at the University of California and Berkeley, and other half have gone to Joshua D. Angrist at MIT and Guido W. Imbens. Just remember, Angrist, Imbens, and Card. So the prize money of 10 million Swedish kronor, it's about 8.6 crores, will be divided to these particular people. Now, these people have actually been very happy about it. But what is the thing that's going on right now? Yep, what is the thing that's going on right now? And why are we supposed to look into this? And definitely when you talk about Nobel, it is not something that is given so easily to the people. It's basically much, much, much more effective. And the citation says that this year's laureates have provided us with insights about labor market and shown what conclusions about the cause and effect could be drawn from natural experiments. So what they have done is, through their research about what some change may have an impact on some other better things. So what we need to focus here according to them is that for example, there are many people who leave the countries, right? Who leave the country, and we often see many Indians leave the country to other. But the question is, will this have any impact on their salaries and employment level? And when you are putting the investments in school education, can it have an impact on future earnings of the students? And if you are raising the minimum wages, can it reduce the employment levels? These kind of interesting questions have been taken up by them, and all these questions have been very, very relevant, and these are the things which we need to focus on and understand. So the cause and effect, when you take a particular step, that is what a cause, and what is the effect of it. This is something which we need to focus on. So what are they specifically pointing out? What are we so much concerned about? How this principle could be used. Now the basic question is that the randomized control trial, for example, in that, let's say there's a group of 100 people, in that we've taken randomly some particular people. Now when you're taking some random people in that, do you think that the output that you're going to get could be 100% effective? It's not going to be that simple, right? So here what they say is that they want to find a way to cut through the observed correlation and establish whether there is this or not. So in simple terms, they just don't want to say whatever they want to, but they would like to show some kind of impact. But how? For example, you can see this particular thing. So about how many years of education and how much level of income. For example, in particular, if you look at this, a person who has got, with around 12 years of education, they have 12% higher income than that of others. Yep, compared to the 11 years education. Similarly, people with 16 years of experience, you can see how much is the difference. They say they have 65% of higher education than those with that of 11 years. So the point here is, there is a cause that you are investing in the education of a child, and yes, that would ensure that the income level could be more to the child also in that perspective. So it is a very interesting thing about how they are looking at this particular matter. Now, going further, I told you about 3 people, right? One is Mr. Card. So what Mr. Card has done is that he has used some natural experiments, right? So for example, what he wants to do is, let's say there is a company who have kept a condition that the minimum wages are 10,000 rupees. For example, minimum wages are 10,000 rupees. For example, tomorrow, if the company says that the minimum wages would be increased to 15,000 rupees, what sort of impact can it have on the employment levels? This is the question. This is something that he has worked on. So when you have higher wages, what happens now when you are raising the minimum wage to 15,000? So which means the companies which are going to give you this are going to be causing some additional burden on them, right? So what happens as a result of it? So now that people were questioning is, will the employment will fall, or is it the case that just because these two things have seemed to occur on similar occasions, like will the higher wages lead to lower employment? That is something which they have used after. So Mr. Card has used a natural experiment in particular, that is which could be happening in real life. Okay, so which could be happening in real life to understand this particular case. So what he has done is, in 1992, the hourly minimum wages in New Jersey was increased from $4.25 to 5.05. And this person has studied the effect on employment in New Jersey and compared it with the neighboring areas of eastern Pennsylvania. And what the results have shown is that by increasing the minimum wages, it has not led to the fewer jobs, but it has actually improved the situation. So his studies from early 1990s challenge the conventional wisdom. People generally think if you are increasing this, this is going to happen. But that is not the case. They say that's about the wages and jobs, what this person has focused on. Okay, right. Looking into the other people now. We have others also, right? The other two more people, Mr. Angus and Imbens. So what they want to do here is, that for their methodological contributions to the analysis of causal relationship, as in they want to use some data that is coming from the natural experiments. When you do some clinical trial or randomized control trial, that may not be that effective. It is not that easy for us to come out with some kind of results too. For example, providing a compulsory education by a year for one group of students may or may not affect everyone in the group in the same way, isn't it? Some students will be studying and some people will not be studying. So what they say is, they have solved the methodological problem about what sort of conclusions can we get from the experiments of natural relationship, how and what we could get from this particular case. But in Indian context, when you talk about the research and findings that these people have done, right, India, it also stated that higher minimum wage will be counterproductive. For example, earlier we know very well about what happened during the COVID-19 times. During the COVID-19 times, we have seen lockdowns, and many states like UP have suspended the labor laws and everything too. And now as a result, what happened? The major reason what they have stated is that we are doing it to increase the employment perspective. So their studies now could be used in this particular perspective, and India already have a minimum wages code. So this shows how unorganized sectors do also require a minimum wage. That is something which is very, very important. So that is all we have for the day. I'll be seeing you all tomorrow with the news of 13th of October at the same time at 11:30 a.m. And guys, before we end the session, do join the Unacademy Plus subscription using the code highlighted here. It's IJIS10. You will be getting 10% of discount over that. Thank you so much and